What's up, friends? Adam Nitti here again. We've got an extra special guest with us today, Jason Palmer, drummer on my new album, The World Is Loud, as well as several other of my tunes and earlier releases as well. Jason hails from Tupelo, Mississippi, which turns out to be this hotbed of genius musical talent I wasn't even aware of until years ago. And we've gotten to work together in a bunch of different contexts. Jason is a part of the Renaissance Men band. We play along with Chris Carver on keyboards, Scott Bernard on guitar, and we've done all kinds of clinics and gigs and all kinds of stuff. But man, thank you so much for doing this. It's so great to have you here, and man, you're just one of my favorite people. We've become fast friends over the years. We have so much in common. You know, we have lots of great conversations.
You need to get out more.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. But man, we didn't really get connected until what? It was a Chris Carver project, right? That initially brought us together.
Yeah.
He reached out years ago, and y'all had me come down and play on some stuff.
Yeah, it was. He hired you for the session. It was in Ryanzi at a studio called The Lodge.
That's right, out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I would have loved to have been in the car with you when you were driving.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what my fate would be that day.
Yeah, you had to be a little bit concerned. But I remember when you walked in the studio, I was like, all right, this is legit.
Man, so those of you that don't know, this is a studio owned by the amazing David Duncan, mutual friend of ours, amazing guitarist, songwriter, now a worship leader as well, right? Isn't he doing some amazing music at his church? And he's got this incredible freestanding studio build in the middle of nowhere, and man, that was a wonderful place to record in.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And, you didn't know any of us. I mean, you didn't really know how we played, how well we played. And I thought we captured some great moments.
Man, we sure did. And we also had the great Brent Mason, right, on that stuff as well. Wasn't he a part of those first sessions? And
he was.
So both Brent and I came down from Nashville, and man, I can tell you that apart from you guys, I remember speaking to Brent after some of the tracking had gone down. We were both outside, and we were both like, man, these dudes are amazing. Did you know about these? No, I didn't. Did you know about? No. And so yeah, that was beginning of an awesome working relationship amongst all of us, and friendship as well. And man, you have this uncanny ability to, man, you can play anything. I guess it's just as simple as that. Every time I think that I've heard you do what you do, across different genres, then you throw something out there groove-wise or beat-wise on a song, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is there a genre this guy can't play? Straight ahead jazz, hip-hop, funk, rock. I mean, yeah, where did you get your versatility from? I mean,
I appreciate you saying that, first of all.
And don't just tell me you practiced, because everybody says that.
I think back, because I've watched some of the other interviews you've done with guys about this record, and, I think a lot of it goes, my dad was a drummer, by the way. And so, that was back during the day of vinyl, and there were always records around my house, but the majority of them were James Brown, Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers, Earth, Wind and Fire, Stevie Wonder, Average White Band. But there was one rock record in there, and it was Led Zeppelin 2.
Ooh, that's my favorite Zeppelin album.
I mean, a whole lot of love. I mean, come on. Yeah. It's rock, but it was nasty funky. I mean, John Bonham's playing on that just knocked me out. I never did really, latch on to like to be a true rock drummer. I was in rock bands, in high school, but my thing has always been groove and pocket. I mean, that's what I've tried to learn. Now, I really didn't play that many styles until I moved to Los Angeles in 1990 and went to school at their Musicians Institute.
Yeah, yeah.
I was exposed to a ton of different styles. I don't know. I think it comes down to my ears. I would never say that I can speak a 100% authentic straight ahead jazz. I can't speak the language of authentic, Afro-Cuban or Brazilian stuff, but I can fake it fairly well.
Yeah.
I guess that's the answer. I don't know.
Man, and sometimes that's all it takes, right? I think you have to have legitimate experience, executing things like that, even if you aren't a self-proclaimed expert in different genres, to have enough of the mature listening skills and to be enough of a sponge to pick up enough of those things to sort of fall into place in an authentic way. It's worth its weight in gold. And man, I can think of a bunch of times where I've had to I've been in musical situations that were slightly outside of my comfort zone. And I really had to, in that moment, think about, okay, what's a song reference? What's a band reference? I want to hear that to help me get closer to what this musician or set of musicians wants. And a lot of times there's the sincerity of trying to match that based on your listening experience. A lot of times that will convey enough of the feel for it to not really suffer any compromise whatsoever, right? I mean, it's about being adaptable. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree with that. And a big part of my learning when I was going to school in Los Angeles, especially in genres like big band and Latin and some of the fusion stuff, is I got instant feedback from my instructors. No, don't do that. Don't. I can remember Efren Toro was my Latin instructor, and there's a lot of traditional rules and stuff that you just don't do as a drummer in Latin music. And it didn't take too many corrections for me to learn that and remember it. Now, taking it beyond just being able to hold a Mozambique down or a samba down. Going beyond that would have taken a lot more practice from me, and I did that while I was out there, and I got a chance to play with some bands that were playing that kind of music. See, here in Tupelo, Mississippi, before I moved out there, I didn't have any real reason to really study that stuff and become adept at it, because I would never have a chance to play any of that stuff really here. Yeah. But out there, it really did. It's funny. Efren, my Latin instructor, I remember one day after class, we would get up in front of the class and play with some pro players, and he would evaluate our playing. And I had gotten decent at a lot of the Latin grooves, and he came up to me after one of the classes, and he was like, "You're from Mississippi, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, how have you learned this stuff? I mean, he said, your groove is right where it needs to be in these styles. How have you done that? And I guess it's from listening, I guess. I mean, and of course practicing some.
Yeah.
You didn't want to say that, but really it's being able to be in a situation with 4 or 5 other guys that are authentic in that language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's great point.
Yeah.
When I lived in Atlanta, I was playing in this Latin band. It was called Vecinos del Mundo, led by an incredible musician named Jerry Fields. And it was that situation. It was me, the sort of wet behind the ears bass player sort of coming into a situation with, legit players, legit students and educators of the style. And man, what an education it was. Um, just the fact that they kind of, took me in and recognized my, my desire to really want to, serve the music and play it well, meant a whole lot to me that they had enough confidence. But, I mean, I certainly was not well versed in that music before stepping into, that situation. And, at the end of the day, if you don't learn from these less familiar situations or brand new situations, I mean, it doesn't really help you, right? You got to be able to take something from it.
Right.
But I've been in that position, outside of my comfort zone, if you will, many times in my past. And, when you're an aspiring player trying to, find your identity and your voice, but at the same time be versatile enough to be able to play with a variety of musicians and, have people want to play with you. You can't just think inside your head. You gotta get outside of it and try to listen as somebody else might listen. That's another thing that I would say. But yeah, man, you have an uncanny ability to adapt and people sometimes take for granted. It's like, musicians, they get on stage or they get in the recording studio and they play together. And so it just automatically meshes and gels. That's not always the case. It really does depends on listening. If you don't listen in a conversation, how are you going to have, a two-way dialogue? And music being the great language analogy, if you don't listen to what's happening around you, how are you going to have an interactive dialogue? And you've always been so amazing at listening and reacting spontaneously. And not everybody can do that, man.
Well, I appreciate that. Another thing I learned out of Los Angeles is when not to play. And
that's great.
I mean, because I was 21, I think, when I moved out there, kind of an immature player somewhat. And I learned real quick, and I was the type of guy that, there were a couple of bands I played with out there where all the guys were famous side people with different guys. And one of them was a friend of mine. He got me a chance to play with this one band out there, and it was like an R&B fusion band. And after every gig, I would go up to the guys in the band and go, I want to know how can I be better at this? Just tell me, and they did, and that helped me tremendously. I learned so much in those couple of years that I played with those couple of bands.
You got to have true humility and a true desire to be open to feedback, to be able to ask those questions. And sometimes it's scary to ask those questions.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Afraid what you might hear. But I really believe, and the more years I've gotten, under my belt and just the more experiences I've had and musical trials, honestly, that I've had, where you get sort of tested in certain situations to see how thick your skin is. After a while, I think you start to gain confidence, a little bit more confidence from those things. You've been through it. You knew you were able to make it through. If stuff ruffles feathers, you shake and move on, so.
Yeah.
So man, I really respect you for always being such a pillar of humility and always, you could see it in your attitude and when you play on stage. I mean, you want to be the best you can be. And man, I just want to surround myself with people like that all the time.
Well, I appreciate that.
Same way.
Yes.
You had a really special and unique role on this album. And I hope you don't take that lightly, but I think you played on 3 songs. You played on the Truth Seeker, which both versions of Truth Seeker, which we've also talked about in Scott Bernard's interview as well, a little bit about the evolution of that song. And
Are both of those versions on the record?
they are not. The new arrangement is on the record, which you should get in the mail any day, by the way. Sorry for the delay.
No.
But you played on that, and you played on The Professor, which is both of those are the two instrumental tunes on the record. So those are kind of special feature tunes. And then you also did a little bit of percussion work, I believe, on Broken Dreams.
Yes, I did.
And that was with Sonny Emery on drum kit on that particular song. So you're on there a few times, blessing the music. But
Awesome.
The Professor in particular is kind of what I was referring to. That is a song that ultimately became a tribute to the late great Neil Peart, and his reputation needs no introduction or explanation. You know, the legendary drummer of Rush, who we unfortunately lost a year ago. In fact, it's a year ago tomorrow. I just found out. My wife just
Really?
reminded me of that.
Wow.
So you had a pretty big responsibility, filling the drum chair on that song. And man, it's one of my favorite drum performances on the album. I know I've told you that a million times, but it's such an exciting part you played. But can you talk a little about your experience working on that tune?
Yeah. Of course, you and I talked about this new project, and I knew that it was going to be in the prog rock vein, so I wasn't surprised when I got the track. And this is the way I approach, most things, especially difficult things that I get from you from time to time.
Sorry.
I didn't even. I lived with it for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days. I just listened to it, and before I even come out here in the studio, just so I'm starting to feel it, starting to maybe come up with some ideas, but nothing set in stone.
Yeah.
But the beginning of that, is when your guitar. By the way, I got to say this: 2 things. Your guitar playing on this record is just phenomenal.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Your vocals, and I'm gonna give you what I think is the highest compliment.
Oh boy.
Rock vocals, in my opinion. It reminds me a lot of John Schlitt.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Best vocalist in all time.
Well, that's, man, yeah. I don't know if I'm deserving of any of that, but man, that means a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Wow.
So back to The Professor. There's a lot of frantic guitar stuff on the intro throughout the song. So as a drummer, I'm thinking, man, this is going to be my chance to, I'm gonna get in on some of that too. But then the more I listened to it, I was like, I need to stay out of the way of that. I need to let that be the focus, and my drums don't need to get in the way of it. They need to support the rhythms and the odd meters and stuff that's going on in there. But just stay out of the way and support. And when I listened to the whole song, I did find one little spot towards the end.
I know the spot you're talking about.
Where I thought, maybe I'll do something here.
Yeah.
So anyway, I did that. But yeah, that's how I approached it. As I've gotten older, I've learned my job as a drummer is to support the rest of the song. People can always ask you to play more. Yeah. But in general, I don't come out of the gate doing that. I used to when I was younger, but I've learned I'm past that now. So that's kind of how I approached it, just kind of supporting what you were already doing.
Man, it's so awesome hearing that, and fascinating too. And you bring up an interesting point that isn't always talked about, and that is analyzing and being sensitive to what is complementary as opposed to similar or emulative. And what I mean by that, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You could have a super busy bass part, like a super busy bass groove in a tune. And the drummer could take the perspective of, man, I'm going to nail these, I'm going to nail the syncopation of it. I'm going to be kind of right there. And the concept or philosophy is one of, we're both as a rhythm section going to embody this approach and kind of, deliver it accordingly. But what I've kind of learned over the years in composition, just writing songs and analyzing tunes and things, even though that can be really cool and really, out front, when you have two parts that are kind of sharing the same space of complexity, what it does is it basically starts to diminish the individual power of each part. Now, it doesn't mean it's not cool anymore, but it doesn't draw as much energy from having, as compared to having one of the parts be that super intricate thing, and then the other part being more complementary, taking almost the opposite approach.
Yeah.
Right. And, so the idea is like, maybe you have this super syncopated, busy bass part, but the drum groove is just, super like just open space. Bass is doing like boom, but the drums are like,
yeah, exactly.
As opposed to the drums like, like it's the kid in me wants to go crazy, when you hear something going crazy, but then the more mature player goes, that is awesome. Let me frame that more. And that's, I don't know, people don't talk about that a lot. At least I don't hear a lot of people talking about that, but it's that more complementary philosophy.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, and I haven't always been that way. Back in my 20s, I would have been so busy on that track. But I mean, I've just learned that's and when I brought the song in, I was messing around with some stuff. It took probably an hour or two before I came up with something that I thought complemented the song. And there's so much going on guitar wise and bass wise that it was easy for me to feel, I think, what needed to be done on that track. And the main thing was just to stay out of the way. So,
man, the part is glorious. One of the things I love about your playing is you've got a really awesome approach to the use of ghost notes in your playing. It's like ghost notes in general are not like a heavy-handed thing. They're ghost notes, but sometimes the placement or the dynamics of those ghost notes can have more gravity than other times. And man, the Professor is a perfect tune. It's kind of like you still have this activity that's almost more felt than it is heard. And I don't know what you're doing. You could explain it, but you're so good with that, and it really complements that tune.
Well, I appreciate that. Normally I play traditional grip, but on that song,
does that help that approach, do you think? Or is that just a matter of preference?
Well, I guess it's a matter of preference, but for that song that was so aggressive, I mean, from the top, I felt like I needed to get a little bit more meat of the stick into the snare. So I turned the stick around and played from the butt end.
Okay.
On that track. So the ghost notes are going to sound a little different with that grip than they do with my traditional grip. My traditional grip is probably a little lighter.
Okay.
But so yeah, that's what I did. I actually did that on True Seeker as well.
Man, I appreciate you explaining that because that helps me visualize more what's happening behind the scenes when I'm listening to that. The other thing that is amazing about what you do in the studio, and we've talked about this before, but I just want to kind of share this with folks, that man, the drum sounds you get are ridiculous. They're so good and so easy to deal with in a mix. I know part of it, we've talked about the microphones you use, which I'm a huge fan of. I found out in Keith Carlock's interview, apparently he uses some of those same microphones, which explains some of the similarities. And I'll let you talk about that. But there's more to the quality of your tones than just microphones. I mean, talk about that if you don't mind. I mean,
Sure. I mean, about, let's see, 3 years ago, I had a remote tracking set up at a different location. It was just a little 15 by 15 room inside my wife's video studio down the street. And I got decent tones in there. As a matter of fact, the Not of This World track I cut in there.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
that. Mm-hmm.
You know, my wife decided one day, she had saved up some money from her video business, and she said, let's build you a place behind the house. And long story short, I was going through, you know, I had tonsil cancer back then. I was going through the treatment during the building of this place, and I don't remember half of it. But I got fortunate. I have a friend of mine, Michael Graham, that kind of gave me some advice on dimensions and ceiling height. And one cool thing he told me to do, which I would never have thought about, was he said, just pick 2 parallel walls and offset one of them 2 or 3 inches.
Interesting.
Yeah, he said that will cut back on the bouncing, standing audio waves in here.
So in other words, take 2 parallel walls and just angle one of them just a few degrees.
Either way, yeah.
Wow.
So the audio can't just bounce back and forth again. The other thing I did at his suggestion was, this building is made completely from concrete blocks. Each one of them has been filled with sand.
Wow.
Kind of the way they build high school band halls.
Okay.
So it's not completely soundproof, but it's really, really close. And, you know, when I first got in there, I was worried. You know, I didn't know what it was going to sound like. This is a new building. And the first couple of tracks that I cut, there was a little bit too much room noise in there for my taste.
Yeah,
so I bought some Arlex. You can see one behind me over here.
Mm-hmm.
That I put in front of the kit that kind of just stops some of the room noise from getting back in the mics.
Mm-hmm.
But that, along with, you know, good drum tuning, you know, playing is part of it. I mean, I'm not, you know, patting myself on the back from that, but, you know, and then the other thing is just the mics. I mean, these mics, I've used a bunch of different mics, and this is by far the best set of mics. And I'm not using any high dollar preamps. You know, I'm using the Personas board back there, but I've never had anybody come back and say, man, I'm just not digging, your sound is just not up to par.
Yeah.
So I think that's basically it.
Man, that's so great. Can you quickly just kind of run through your setup, your basic recording setup?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see some of it back here.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, is that the kit you used on the Professor?
Yes.
Awesome.
This is a custom kit made by Spawn. It's a hybrid. The shells are hybrid. They're part maple and part acrylic, which is unique. I'm using a combination of Earthworks DK7 as their drum mic kit, but I've added some other little tweaks. One big one is I use 3 mics on my snare. I have an Earthworks on the top, an Earthworks on the bottom, but I have an AKG side-facing condenser just over the rim of the top head. Really makes a big difference. Of course, I use a sub kick on the kick, and then an Earthworks mic in the kick.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's basically it. I use Studio One, and I'm recording through a Personas Studio Live 32 channel board.
Awesome. How are you liking that setup?
I love it. I mean, I love it. This is my man cave here, man. You know, I'm always ready to go. This kit is not going anywhere. I'm not going to take this on a gig. It's good to go. Yeah. And
I just upgraded to Studio One version 5. Do you have that yet?
I have not done that yet.
Looking really good so far. I've been enjoying it. I used it on a couple of remote sessions last week, right after installing it, and it was rock solid. So yeah, very, very cool. That's really cool, man. And I appreciate you going through the specifics. You know, while we're talking, I'm hearing your drum tracks in my head on these tunes from the record. And, you know, another thing I think that's important, especially for young drummers or aspiring studio drummers to understand, is dynamic consistency with how you hit. And you know, one thing that's key for me, like if I'm mixing a record, I don't want the kick drum volume and attack to be constantly varying through the whole song. Now, obviously, useful dynamics are fine, but when you're listening to a backbeat or something, and it's like, every other kick drum isn't quite the same volume as the other, and it really messes with the foundational nature of the track. And you are awesome at you're like a human compressor, but in a good way, not in a mechanical way. You just have a very consistent approach to how you hit the drums, which, interestingly enough, is something that I notice also, that a lot of the Nashville established session drummers that I've played with in town, they're the same way. It's you can tell that somewhere along the lines in their education or development, they understood that in a recording setting, consistency is key. What taught you that? Was that a trial and error thing, or is that just how you've always played?
I don't think it's how I've always played. I think when I really started to do more session stuff and I listened back to, just my drums, and I could hear inconsistencies. I mean, I think that just brought it to my attention, where I really started, focusing on not letting that happen, very often.
Yeah.
And it's a technique thing too. I mean, you got to hit the drums consistently. Of course, there are times where you use dynamics and play more off of the drum, like Keith was talking about the other day. But I mean, I need to give you a consistent signal. Otherwise, you're going to be pulling your hair out.
Yeah. Is it? Do you find that it's the remote recording environment? Do you like it better or worse than like the live sessions we did at David's studio, from a work environment or just a general enjoyment even of it all? Is there one that you prefer over the other?
Actually, there are pros and cons to both. I fought getting a setup like this for years. I mean, I had a friend of mine, Jermaine Morgan.
Yeah. Another fantastically talented musician.
Yeah, really talented. He stayed on me for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. He would constantly be saying, dude, you've got to get start out small, get some kind of recording setup. But I was intimidated by it, because all the other session stuff I'd ever done, there was always an engineer. I didn't have to mess with that. So I finally decided one day, I went and bought Pro Tools, got a little 16-channel interface, and opened up Pro Tools and just sat there and looked at it. I had no idea. And I had to call 2 or 3 of my buddies over to show me how to route the inputs and outputs and all that.
Yeah.
I finally learned how to make Pro Tools do just basically what I needed it to do.
Yeah.
And so, but to answer your question, I totally love the spontaneity and the creativity that comes from being in the same room with other people. At the same time, I like being able to come in here without people watching me, looking at their watch, and no pressure, any time of the day or night. When I get in the mood to come out here, I can do it. I can take it as long as I need. So there are pros and cons. There have been situations where I've cut a drum track. Maybe the track that the artist sent me was nowhere near complete, and then they send me the final. When I hear the final, I go, man, if I'd known you were going to do that, I would have done something a little different.
Yeah.
That's the only drag about it. But I absolutely love it. I love it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think there's pros and cons to both, and it's funny, the perfectionistic side of me that I battle with sometimes ends up being my worst enemy. Remote tracking sometimes, especially if I'm doing my music, I can go down a rabbit hole that just dooms me to a lot of hours of work that maybe was never necessary in the first place. But even working for other people, it took me a while. When I started getting paid to do sessions for people in my studio, I had to kind of learn how to be a good steward of my time. I was spending I was spending so much extra time on the tracks, not that the tracks don't deserve a special attention, but you really have to learn when to kind of stop, and sort of evaluate honestly from the outside and be able to go, hey, this is a really good take. Let me give the artist the power of deciding whether or not they need something else, without me, trying to take control over every single aspect and nuance of what I play. There's a discipline to that. If you
Yeah.
don't follow at least some sort of discipline when you're remote tracking, you end up making, if we just look at an economic perspective, right? You can end up making almost nothing per hour because you spent so much time, running down the hole of something that maybe never even needed to happen. And I learned the hard way, because I remember spending on my first remote sessions, spending so much time on a take that I thought was just going to be the cat's meow. Boy, the artist is going to love this take. He's going to love this approach. And so I spent extra time, like more time than I ever should have spent, only to have the artist go, that's cool, but it's not really what I'm looking for. And here I was boldly going in a direction like I could get inside their head. I didn't know what they ultimately were hearing.
Yeah.
And that was a learning curve for me when I was doing my very first sessions. So,
Well, that's interesting you bring that up, because I watched the Keith Carlock interview, and he kind of alluded to the fact that he's kind of experimenting with learning to punch drums. I'm probably a little bit even further behind than that. So the Professor, Truth Seeker, the one I cut on Out of This World, are all top to bottom takes.
which is mind blowing for any of you that have heard those songs yet, or who will hear those songs. These performances that Jason's mentioning, these are very challenging and intricate performances. And I forget sometimes, because you've told me that before, and I forget. No, these were like one take things that I'm just shaking my head going, wow, that's
well, and it, like you said, it causes me more time, because I may get halfway through the take and have to redo it. I'll tell you a funny story about Not of This World, that track. And you told me when you sent it to me that this is one of the barn burners on this record. Solo section.
Yeah, those are my exact words.
Yeah. And you said there's a solo section at the end over this vamp. And I remember I told you, I said, send it, I'll listen to it, and I'll tell you right quick, I'm not the guy for this. But when I heard it, I thought, I can do this. But you put those hits in that vamp at the absolute most uncomfortable place that I have ever. So anyway, I didn't even go in the studio with that track for 2 weeks. I just listened to it.
Wow.
This is when I was at my other place, and I finally went in and messed around with it a little bit, got some ideas. And I'll never forget, it was on a Sunday. I told my wife, Ann, I said, this was like at lunchtime, I said, I'm going in the studio and I'm not coming out until I get the track.
Oh my goodness.
So it took me 4.5 hours. And, I would get almost to the end of the solo vamp and, hit a clunker and have to start from the top.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
The closer I would get to the end of that song, the more nervous I was getting, because I was getting closer to the end. But so anyway, it took me 4.5 hours.
The thing is, what we're talking about is on any level, it's impressive, that you would go straight through and cut it straight through like that. Multiple takes or not, the ultimate track that's on the record is you doing that single take. It's amazing. But for younger players today, I don't know if they all realize that. Well, back in the day, that's how it was done.
Right.
They didn't have Pro Tools. It was bands going in live together, playing the entire song from beginning to end. They may play it multiple times, but the take that was taken at the end was the one that they liked the best. And
Yeah.
people, players had to be skilled enough and seasoned enough to be able to do that. We've almost gotten spoiled by these abilities, by the ability to do ninja precision like punch-ins and manipulations of our tracks down to the note or even the attack of a note to get it perfect. And although from a technological perspective, it's amazing, and it can also sometimes rescue an otherwise amazing take that may have had a clam in it that you just can't live with. I've got nothing wrong with with that. I've done fixes on my stuff left and right before, but to really kind of get to the heart of the matter and be honest with yourself, am I consistent enough? Am I skilled enough to be able to get from beginning to end with a take that could pass muster on a master? That is a noble goal to set for yourself if you're a musician. I don't care how old you are. That's something that I think is really important, and I think it's worth pursuing.
Well, I think even if I was a cut and paste whiz on the drums in Studio One, I think I still would approach, the song as my goal is still, I want to get a complete take, because I think that's the most natural. I mean, it sounds the most natural, but it puts a lot of stress on me to do that. But at the same time, I need to buckle down and learn how to do it.
Yeah.
I know there are guys out there that chop and cut and read, but drums, man, at least the times I've tried to punch, there's so much resonation going on from the cymbals, toms. And if you start chopping and doing a crossfade the wrong way or something, it's obvious that something has been cut off. So that's what makes it difficult.
Yeah, there are some tricks you can definitely do if you need to rescue something, and boy, I've pulled off some amazing magic tricks before with, for whatever reason something happened, a track had to be rescued or manipulated or combined with another take or something, and I've learned how to get around some of that. But the thing that you can't necessarily nail is, even if you decide to go back and recut a verse, let's say, the exact precise amount of energy that was used in playing that verse 5 minutes prior might not be exactly the same as when you lay it down again. And I've been in sessions before where players who were recutting a particular verse section or bridge section, they have to do it multiple times because they're trying to hone in on emulating the exact same feel they used when it went down the first time. Again, it's not a negative thing. It's the reality of how music is made. But yeah, that's the beauty of the one take. It's incredible. Yeah. Who do you look up to as drummers that, or who influentially, who are the drummers that you feel like really sort of shaped your philosophy for playing?
Right off the bat, any drummer that played with James Brown, that was a big one. The guy that played with Average White Band, I can't remember his name. I copped all of those early Average White Band grooves. There was just something about it, only because, and this is an interesting point, because of the records that my dad had. It's amazing how much influence that had on me. That's all that was there. It was straight up R&B for the most part. And that's kind of happened with my own son, actually. It's funny how that works. My musical influences, he's definitely, he's taken after me a little bit on that. But
what a cool legacy to be able to pass on. It's amazing how that works.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm happy about that, because there's so much bad stuff out there right now, and he sees it for what it is, and he enjoys great music.
Yeah.
But yeah, any James Brown drummers, Average White Band drummers, Dave Weckl, he was an early influence of mine. There's tons of them. There's just tons of them. I was amazed by Neil You say Peart, Pert?
Yeah, some people say Peart, some say Pert.
But, I was amazed by that. I mean, I really was. I think it because of my musical immaturity, I never did latch on to Rush really as a band. I went to see them once. I was in some bands that we played some Rush music.
Cool.
But, but I never did. I was always more of the, pocket groove. That's what I enjoyed listening to. So any groove pocket drummer out there, they have definitely influenced me for sure.
Yeah. Neil contributed so much to the drumming world, and even down to the aesthetic of what a rock drum kit.
Oh yeah,
like
all the way around.
I mean, just part of what excited you so much about seeing him play was the spectacle of his setup, and just knowing that he was literally going to use every piece of gear that was up there. Which was really
that was
special.
cool.
My wife and I got to see Rush in Nashville. I guess it was their last tour that came through here years back. But, I don't think it's any secret that the majority of the Rush fan base is male, So, her going with me was kind of a big deal because it wasn't one of her favorite bands per se.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, we left the show and she was sincerely excited and impressed by what she saw because of everything, the production of it and how they incorporated media and film and props on stage that, were interactive and of course the playing was phenomenal and it was cool to have her there with me. She's a huge music fan, but that wasn't a band that she necessarily gravitated to. I did when I was coming up as a bass player. But we had such a great time, and I'm grateful I got to see them perform many times in my lifetime. And it was so sad when we lost Neil. But But man, my hope and prayer is that the Professor, when it's released as a single, or if it's shared amongst other musicians or fans of his, is that it will have an opportunity. I really hope it kind of permeates has a chance for people from his fan base to hear it, and because I just want to be able to honor his contributions and.
I think it will, and I think this whole record, man, is going to blow some people's minds.
Well, I appreciate that. It's exciting, just kind of seeing people's reactions so far because it is such a different release from my prior, more fusion, type things. So it's very cool. I appreciate that. Can you tell us, this slowdown, this season of pandemic and craziness, it's just affected everybody in so many different ways. We've talked a lot during this time, and I know you've got an incredible family, and you guys are all real tight, and different folks are kind of experiencing different levels of financial hardship. Some folks have some things to fall back on, some don't. You've maintained a positive attitude throughout this whole thing. I mean, what's been the source of your positivity and wherewithal during all of this?
Oh man, God would definitely be in there for sure. But my family, my wife and I are empty nesters now. My son is doing his last 2 years of pharmacy school in Jackson, Mississippi, and it's been fantastic. I mean, I love the empty nest syndrome, but for me, I own I'm a third generation owner of a family-owned grocery store here in Tupelo. So,
which is such a cool piece of side trivia about you, because people who hear you play are probably assuming that's the only thing you've ever done, and it's so cool that you've got this family legacy business that you're a part of as well.
Yeah, and I've actually done. First of all, I'm so thankful to be involved with you. I mean, listen to you for years, never in a million. If you had told me 10, 15 years ago, dude, you're going to end up on an Adam Nitti record, I would have said you lost your mind.
Oh, man.
Lost your mind. So I'm thankful for that. And I totally enjoy making connections. And I've made more connections. You know, I lived in Los Angeles for 4 years, and that's all I did was play music. I played with, you know, a bunch of different people. But I've done more high profile stuff since I've been here, just from right in here. And it's just been fantastic. You know, I'm thankful that I have a business that pays the bills, and I don't have to stress out about, you know, how am I going to pay my mortgage next month because I haven't had any gigs. But during the pandemic, I've done, I don't know, probably 10 or 15 different tracks for different people.
That's great. That's
which, you know, and that's cool. But I really enjoy it. You know, I've gotten to work with a lot of people I've never even met. Done a lot of different types and styles of music. And when I left California and moved back here, I thought I committed musical suicide. I'm not going to go out and play Mustang Sally for $50. That's not a lot.
That's not you.
No, it's not me.
Yeah.
But it's just been amazing, you know. And if I had not listened to people like Jermaine and my wife and say, look, you need to do this and take this approach to it. You know, the cool thing is I've had in the last week 2 different young drummers contact me, friends of Isaac's, my son, who want to do this. And they wanted advice on how to at least get started on this.
That's so cool.
I was completely honest with them. I encouraged them just like I was encouraged. And actually, one of them came by my studio the next day after I talked to them. I gave them a tour and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. The pandemic is awful, yes, but I mean, it's been a fantastic time with my wife and my son when he's here. Been crazy at the store at times.
I bet. I can't imagine.
Early on, it was absolute insanity.
Wow.
And still, things are not back to normal. I mean, I'm still, you know, if I order 100 cases, I may get 60. I mean, it's just, I don't know if and when the supply level will ever get back to normal. I don't know. But anyway.
Wow, that's cool. Your family is so great. Your wife Ann she's such a sweetheart. What I love about Ann is she's your biggest fan. It's so obvious, and she's like a giddy hype super fan of yours, and it just brings me so much joy because she's so proud of you and what you've done, and I know you guys are super tight. You remind us so much of me and Stephanie in a lot of ways, in just in terms of the level of support that we've gotten throughout the years and encouragement. Sometimes when, you know, probably we're not believing as much in ourselves as we should, you know, thank God we have them to help kind of fan the flames.
Yeah.
But, and then your son.
She did so many gigs with me out in California. She could set this up and tear it down just as fast as I can.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You just reminded me. Ann is the first person to hoist gear into the venue. I remember her running by me one day or one night at a gig and, you know, like doing a marathon, and she's got the whole stage almost set up and we're just still schlepping.
That's her. That's her.
That is totally her. And then your son, Isaac, who is incredibly talented. You shared that, forgive me, I can't remember the name of the song, but
Groove.
Man, what an incredible talent he is. And obviously what's the saying, doesn't fall far from the tree, right? You've obviously been a huge influence on him. And yeah, man, the ironic positive nature of the pandemic, some of the things that have come from that. That's been a popular topic in these interviews, you know, just kind of being able to look at the positive and how some things have happened that would not have happened if not for this slowdown. Namely, for me, this album would not be done. This was finally my chance to have an uninterrupted, huge amount of time to finally get it all done. And I worked so hard, and, I tried to be really focused and be responsible. At the beginning, I was just kind of bummed out. It's like, oh my gosh, all my touring is gone. My main source of income is gone, and it's still the case. But somehow, we've made it through with the financial side of it, and thank God for that. And it's allowed me to learn new things, finish this record. I mentioned in another interview, I started software developer school. Now I'm in my 7th or 8th week of that, which has been
cool. Yeah.
It's so challenging and so fun. And I did it as a basically a preemptive backup plan if, God forbid, I did have to do some serious augmenting of my income source, from something else. Because let's face it, none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know when gigs are going to start up again, especially let alone like regular frequency, like it was. So I know you're grateful for your ability to kind of have that stuff covered, and other players who have something, anything like that in place that's on the side is so valuable right now.
Yeah. And you're right. This pandemic has definitely caused or brought some things to the surface that have been positive, especially in my life at the store. And I never would have thought that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Jason, what is the best way that people can get in touch with you if they want to hire you to play on their projects? And I'll share it in the video, in the bottom of the video as well. But can you just tell us how to get in touch?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Jason Palmer. I mean, I can tell you my email address if you would like. You can put that up there.
Sure, if you're okay with sharing that. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's Palmer, like my last name, Palmer, 4366 at Comcast.net.
Okay, great.
Yeah, either one of those ways.
Awesome, man. And like I said, we'll put that info on here for everybody.
Okay.
Anything else that you would like to share, that any inspired wisdom or any projects that you're a part of that are coming down the pike? Anything you want to mention?
Two things. Two things. First of all, thank you so much for involving me on this project.
Thank you for being a part of it.
Yeah, because your pool of world-class drummers is massive. So I appreciate the responsibility that you put on me to give you.
Well, you're right there in the deep end yourself, man. So thank you for sharing your gifts and talents.
Yeah, and the other thing is, everybody go get this record, man.
I promise I didn't tell him to say that.
No,
thank you.
Not.
Yeah,
he did not.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an exciting time for sure.
I could do a magic trick or something if you want me to.
Oh, will you?
No, I'm kidding. I don't have
for real. Jason does amazing magic tricks, and he's entertained us at many sound checks before with his magic tricks that are like legit.
I should have brought something, but I don't have.
Yeah. Anything. All right. Well, it's just another reason we'll connect again in this way for sure.
Yeah.
But Jason Palmer, thank you so much. Man, love you and your family. Thank you for being a part of this project and the past projects. Everybody, please check out Jason, get in touch with him, hire him, put him on your music. You will not regret it. Can't say enough about him. And thanks for being a friend and such a humble inspiration as well to everybody that you come into contact with.
I appreciate the kind words, man. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you have a wonderful evening, and we'll see the rest of you online.
Okay. See you.